Welcome, everyone. We will get started in just a few minutes. We have about 3 minutes and we will get started. I'd love to know where everyone is from. If you can, put it in the chat. Hi, Lucinda. We have Nevada in the house today because I know Melanie is from Nevada too. So Nevada and Nevada, I guess it depends on where you're from. Do you say that? We will get started in just a couple minutes. And there's Melanie. So I know I've seen both of you all and worked with you all either on different webinars or in person, and we're starting to see a lot of the tribes open up. So a lot of the youth programming that we were talking about doing virtual, some people are going live and in person, and we're just checking out, seeing what everybody's doing. It seems like most of the tribes are opening back up in July. That seems to be what's going on. So we're pretty excited about that. And there's Melody, my hiking buddy. She and I have hiked in Colorado, had a great time. Allison, nice to see you, Allison. We have 1 minute and we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. I hope you all are having great weather. It's sunny behind me. You can kind of see in my blinds here, but we are under a tornado watch and a flood watch, even though there's not rain right now. We've had nonstop rain and there's moss growing everywhere and mold outside on our porch. And Oklahoma is known for having crazy weather, and it's for real because later today we're supposed to have some pretty bad storms. And so if you hear me sounding a little nasally, it's because we have so much rain right now. We'd love to share it with people who are experiencing drought. Okay, it is time for us to go ahead and get started. Got a lot of people here. If you would go ahead and put in the chat where you're from. A couple of you guys did that. Thank you so much. My name is Camille Koster, and I'm a trainer with IDRS. And this is the second part of a series that we're doing around youth entrepreneurship. And so the first one we talked about budgeting and how to create and save so that a young person, when they start a business, can actually go into it with some financial savvy. This one is business idea generation. And before we jump into the PowerPoint, I'm just going to show you guys the Side Hustle curriculum if you've never seen it before. So one of the things that we teach is something called the Side Hustle, and it's a curriculum that was built from Chris Guillebeau's book, Side Hustle. And if you've never heard of him, he has so many great tools, the $100 Startup, Money Tree. I mean, he has a lot of books, and he has a podcast called Side Hustle School that has over 1,500 small business ideas that people have generated and they're making money with. And so it's just great as you start working with youth to listen to those podcasts to get some ideas. So the first thing I'm going to do is just share my screen. I'm alone today because my coworker is not feeling well. So if you cannot see the screen when I think you can, if you'll put it in the chat, that would be great. So right now, I should be sharing my screen and you should be seeing, let's see, you should be seeing the Side Hustle. Hang on, let me go back. If you don't see something that says start a side hustle, if somebody will tell me, that would be great. So essentially, the Side Hustle is a curriculum that the youth get, that they get to capture all their answers in when we're going through this book. And so it's something we provide free when we come and do Side Hustle training. And then you guys will get it today in your follow-up email, because the whole idea of what I'm doing is teaching other people how to teach this curriculum, because we know we can't be everywhere, and you may just want to pick out bits and pieces of it. And if you don't want to teach this curriculum, but you definitely want to be able to share it, make sure and let us know, because we can help you. So I'm just going to go through and show you a few things. So as we go through the workbook, I'll be referring to it. And so there's just, questions that the youth will fill in as we go through this. And so they're filling this entire thing in as we talk through things. They're drawing, they're writing, they're generating ideas. And when they finish this Side Hustle book, they actually will end up having a one-page business pullout. So it's basically a business plan pullout, which means that from that one page, they could start a side hustle. And we have seen loads of kids do it. So just wanted to show you that. You will get that today, but I'll refer to it a lot. And so it's a great curriculum that they get to take and fill in as you go along, and then they can use it. So with that, we're going to jump into our presentation. So I will, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will go back and just take a look at that chat. Like I said to you guys, I'm on my own today, so you may have to give me a little grace as I go through this. Okay, so let me get this up and running, and we'll get this going. All right, so hopefully you guys can see the Teaching Native Youth How to Generate Business Ideas. If you can't, you can go ahead and put it in the chat, and I'll see it at some. There's nothing in the chat, so we're probably good right now. Okay, so my name is Camille Koster. Like I said, I am a trainer for IDRS. I've been working with youth for over 20 years. I am Cherokee and live here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Have lived in Oklahoma most of my life on Cherokee tribal land, which is now back to being Cherokee reservation land, which is really exciting for us here in Oklahoma. We are hoping to do both in-person and virtual training this summer with youth as our tribal partners start opening up. So we're really excited about that. So this is who we are. I think everyone on here, you've been with us before, but if you have not, make sure and visit nativebiz.org because that's where you can go and see upcoming events and what we're about. So we help youth and adults start small businesses and actually grow businesses. So we do technical assistance if someone is wanting to start a business and just has an idea and doesn't know if it's feasible. And then we do all the way from if you need to grow your business and you're looking for those next steps. We provide these things free of charge because we are grant driven, and we want to thank our sponsors today who provide us with funding so that we can do this. So like I mentioned, this is the side hustle. Here's just an example of a classroom of young people that we were doing activities. What I will tell you when you work with youth is, you really only want to have about 7 minutes of content in between an activity or something that they're doing hands-on. 7 minutes is stretching it nowadays, and that's really hard, as a facilitator, to keep things rolling, but it's really where we are with our young people. So as we go through this curriculum, I implement just constant activities. It may just be something that they do with their person next to them. It may be something that they do in a large group, but we just really keep it moving and shaking so they stay engaged. So the first thing that we are going to talk about today when we start talking about working with youth and generating ideas is really that idea of a community assessment. So if you are going in and you've never worked with the young people that you are engaging with, this is a great place to start. If you have worked with the young people, still a great place to start, because a lot of times your young people really haven't processed the community that you live in. So this is in the Side Hustle book. And so essentially you're going to walk through and ask, is this a rural or an urban community? Tell me about the economic factors. If you have a reservation that's in a tourist area or you're in a touristy area, are there tourists that are buying from you or near you, or is it just locals? You will look at all of the challenges in the community. And so this is a time to really pull out of the youth everything that you can about your community. Now, I will tell you that probably 1 out of every 5 communities that I've been in and worked with, some sensitive issues have come up. And so I suggest you address those in 1 or 2 ways. The first way I would say is, be ready for it and be able to process some of the things that are being said, or actually, bring in a professional at a later time and tell the youth that you really want to put that in a parking lot and answer their questions well. And so I'll just give you a great example. So in one community we were working in, we had 50 young people, and this idea that the elders were not being taken care of was really heavy on a lot of their hearts. And it wasn't that people didn't want to take care of them. It was just that the parents of the young people that we were serving, a lot of them were not on the reservation. Some were incarcerated, some were having drug issues, all sorts of different things. And so they said the little things that their elders needed, such as, lawn care or just small projects around the house or taken to the grocery store, just were not happening. And so, as those things come up, don't let them surprise you, because they will come up, and it can get a little heavy. And so just have a plan before you go into that. But here's the great thing. Out of that conversation, we had 5 young ladies that one of their side hustles that they thought of was to basically start a small business to help care for the elders. And they were, not a program of any kind, but just basic outdoor, just cleaning up the yard or doing small projects in the house, going to the grocery store. And so when these things come up, just make sure that you can frame them as opportunities, but be ready for some conversations. Now, why do we want to do this community assessment? We really want to do it because you're going to identify in your community's needs and gaps that basically maybe an adult doesn't want to take on as a business because it doesn't generate enough revenue. For an example, I had a young man that wanted to start washing cars, and they didn't have a car wash in their community, and he had the ability to do a mobile car wash type situation. And somebody may not want to do that as their full-time hustle because it may not bring in enough money, but for a young person who's just trying to generate $100 a month, it may work great. So when you do these community assessments, you're going to identify things in that community, in your community, that there are need of. So that's a great place to start. This activity, depending on how much your young people will talk, could be 30 minutes to an hour. So this really sets that stage for your young people, seeing that you care about them, that you're vested in their community, and you're really willing to listen. So next, after that community, the next step, we're going to go through this poll. I'm just going to skip it today because it's going to be tough to go back and forth without somebody here helping me. So we'll hit that another time. The next step is really leaning into the young people and asking them the why behind why they want to make money. So we know that in psychology, if we're intrinsically motivated, like internally motivated versus externally motivated, we're more than likely going to stick with a goal or whatever it is we put our mind to. So just like with everything else with a young person, they want to know why. I mean, that starts at like 2 years old. Tell me why you want me to do this. So instead of us telling them because you need to make money, because you need to learn how to run a business, we really want to lean in and get them to tell us the why. So once again, this is a lot of asking questions. Is it you want to help your parents with bills? Are you wanting to save for a car? Do you want to buy new clothes? Just whatever it may be. So in the workbook, there's an area that that they can write this out, draw pictures, whatever it is they're great at. So in all of my youth activities, I always have little tickets that you can give a ticket and put a ticket in a drawing. And I always use tickets to encourage people to participate. And so throughout the day, I will always have drawings, maybe a $10 Amazon card or little giveaways, because we really sometimes have to incentivize some of our kids to talk. But if they're not willing to talk, you can always call on them. So as we go through these activities, I encourage you to always talk to the young people and have at least 2 or 3 people give you the answer to what they just filled in. After you get a couple people talking, you usually can get a few more talking. All right. Let me look at the chat real quick and make sure we don't have anything there. I don't see anything. So next, after you get them to tell you their why, the next step is to get them to start thinking creatively. So most of us are left or right brained. I mean, we can kind of look at this list and see, okay, this is more me or this is more me. But creativity is not a right or left brain activity. So if you think about when you were a child, or if you watch a child play, a little child may have a play car and they're making an imaginary road where there's no road. That's creativity. When you're pretending, when you're thinking in your mind things that you see that are really not there, that's creativity. So we're all creative. And if you ask somebody, are you creative, we usually just think art or graphic design or something, but that's really not it. We're all creative. So next, we're going to tap into that creative place inside of our young people. So once again, activities are how I teach everything, either reinforce it or introduce it. And so for this area, I always introduce with an activity and then talk about it and then do another activity at the end. So over to the left, we're just going to do this real quick with you guys. Hopefully you have a piece of paper in front of you. If you don't, you can grab one. And so over on the left are 3 circles. And in those 3 circles, I would love for you guys to draw these 3 circles. Don't start yet. Let me tell you when you can go. But I want you guys to draw these 3 circles, okay? And so here is the challenge. Once your pen touches the paper, you can't lift it up, but I need you to try and draw these 3 circles. So I'm going to go ahead and let you do it. I'll give you about 30 seconds. And if you happen to achieve drawing those 3 circles with one basically stroke, so you put your pen on the paper and then you can't lift it off until you get all 3 circles, put it in the chat. Say, I got it. And while I'm giving you time to do that, I'll go and make sure there aren't any questions anywhere. We're good. So these 3 activities that we have here, I'm going to include in the video or in the email that you get. There are YouTube videos showing you how to do all of those. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through and show you the video today. But you usually will get somebody that can get it. And there are more than one way to get this. We figured that out because I found kids that have, said, well, that's not how I did it, but it worked. So that middle activity is similar to the circles in that you have to connect all the dots without lifting your pen and make 4 lines. The last one is just which line is bigger than the other because it's an optical illusion. But when you do these, give them ample time because there's going to be some fun chatter and some excitement, and then play the video. Once again, always have maybe a prize or something for participation because it really keeps things moving and going. So let's see. I don't see anybody that's saying I've got it yet. So all right, so we're going to move on, but there are hundreds of creativity activities out there just to get their brains going because we want them to think a little bit differently than they did when they walked in. So when we start talking about idea generation and side hustle, a side hustle is a small business that you can really start without a lot of money, without a lot of time invested, meaning that you have to try something new or start something that you've never done before. We want a young person to take their existing gifts, skills, talents, and abilities, apply them today. And yes, they're going to have to learn a little bit of something new because we all do. Maybe we're not, experts in Instagram. I said on an Instagram webinar yesterday, and oh my goodness, I learned so much. Okay, so Lauren got it and Stephanie got it. Okay, awesome. You guys are awesome. So, that's really what we want to do. So yes, they will learn along the way, but we want them to be able to start something that doesn't consume their time. Because when we think of a young person, we're thinking of someone either still in high school, still in college, they may be doing a summer work program, and they may want to start something during that time because they've got a little extra money. So this is an activity, and it's on the next page, that you're going to walk through with them and really say, what do you do well that you like to do? And once again, this really is pulling information out of these young people. So you're going to have people that very easily can write these things down, or you're going to have to actually walk through the process with them. So I'm always walking around the room during this activity, and many of the ones that were asking for information, and if I see someone not writing, I will stop and really draw things out of them, because you may have young people that have never been told what they do well. Maybe they've been told the opposite of that, and so that's not in their mindset. And I always tell them, what do you like to do other than sleeping and playing video games? Because those are the first 2 answers I always get. So, pulling that out of them all the way to what I don't do well and I don't like to do. And so that's really things that you will not do. Now, does that mean that you may not end up having to do that in the middle of a side hustle? Well, maybe so. But it's, you identified it and it's something that you're not really great at that you may have to work on. So this just gets them starting to think. So for instance, if you're someone who loves to watch YouTube videos, so I may have a young person say, I love to watch YouTube. And then I dive in and say, well, what do you watch on YouTube? And they tell me, a young lady may tell me that they watch makeup videos. I love to watch people doing makeup, and I love to watch people doing hair. And so, that really can become a very viable side hustle, because we've had young people who have produced or were able to start going to birthday parties. So young ladies' birthday parties and doing hair and makeup. And when you think of prom and weddings and all sorts of things, once again, those things that someone may not invest all of their money and try to start a full-time business, but they could do well part-time. All right, so like I said, we're looking for these things that they're already great at or good at. that they don't need a lot of prep time to invest in, not a lot of new learning, and then they already have the existing talent to make happen. So here is a list of the ones that we've seen actually started within our group. And everything from DJ for special events to a young man who was 19 and an expert at building resumes. And he identified in his community that people were struggling to get jobs because they didn't have resumes, but the jobs in his area always required a resume. So instead of, getting an expensive resume service, he would do it for less expensive. Reselling clothes and shoes are always a big one. Reselling items in general are a big one. So one of the activities that we'll get to later on in this is that I have the young people go and look at the latest sales platforms. So TikTok is one that people are selling on. Instagram is one that people are selling on right now. And so having them go through and look at the pros and cons. And so this is from start to finish of creating an idea all the way to how do I sell is part of our curriculum. So here's just, some examples, and great to get the ideas started and generated as you start working through this. All right, so there's always going to be this feeling of I've got to be perfect from the first second that I start generating an idea, and that's not what we're looking for. So here are some guidelines, and they're in the Side Hustle book that we talk about, that you're going to generate ideas. This is brainstorming. This is like, if there was any possibility in the world, I'm going to do this. You're going to not make assumptions right now that it doesn't work. Because so many times, I can think through an idea and have an idea and decide it doesn't work in 30 seconds without really stepping back and saying, well, how could it work, or could it possibly work? And then overcome habitual thinking, that same idea. So we as humans think the same, roughly the same thoughts 90% of the time that we thought the day before, and that's called habitual thinking, unless we step outside of that box of thinking a new thought. So, one of the things that was really phenomenal in a community that we went into was I had a group of 5 young men. They were a challenge in the training because they were having a lot of fun at their table, kind of loud and talking a lot, but they ended up having this idea of fishing. So they were in a community where there's a lot of fishing, and it's pretty much year round, a highly touristy area where they could actually take people out to fish. They had the equipment. But as we began to work with them, it was not only the fishing, but what are you going to do after you catch the fish? Because people that don't know how to fish, they don't know how to clean a fish, right? They don't know how to do anything with it. And then we even took it a step further and said, well, they may be able to take it back to the house they're renting or whatever it may be and cook it, but are they going to have the spices? So it took on this idea of, from the beginning to the end, of taking someone out to fish. And of course, they said you can now get your fishing license online. So we've got that taken care of, all the way to sending them home with the filleted fish and a spice pack that they could actually use with the fish. So, sometimes our young people can really just think these things through and come up with incredible results. So in our session with them, we were looking up the cottage rules, the laws in their community that would, affect all of these things. And of course, that's an important part of it. So next, helping them generate ideas. So the next step is really identifying things that your friends say you're good at. So, this idea generation may be the toughest part, just because a lot of people go into things not thinking they have the skills to run a business. So, you may have to ask them, what do you think about in your free time? Have you ever thought about this? If you could help someone in your community, what would you do? Is there something you feel strongly about? I know I talk about the young man that cleans up the reservation dogs and sells them on Facebook, but he felt very strongly about he was really sad that there were all these stray dogs running around, and they're nice dogs. A lot of them were nice dogs, but nobody really took care of them or wanted them until he cleaned them up. And then, are there learned skills from your parents or grandparents? So a big part of what we do is also art, and the things that were passed down traditionally, and we talk about that a lot too. Let me grab a drink real quick. Okay, next, by this time, you should have your young people generating maybe 3 to 5 ideas at best. Like if they can come up with 3 to 5 ideas that they could possibly do per person, that would be great, because the next activity that we're going to do is testing those ideas. And so everything we're doing works with adults too, because we've done this curriculum with adults also. But how do they take that idea and then turn it into money? And so the idea here is we're going to introduce a couple points. So first of all, you've got to have the right frame of mind to be an entrepreneur. My husband owns a business, and we've actually jumped into a new business in the last year. And I saw him, he's 47, been a firefighter his whole 20 some years. But when we jumped into entrepreneurship, I saw him freeze when it came to trying to cold call people or trying to get new jobs that someone maybe referred another person, but he didn't know them because of his personality. He can talk to anyone in person, but that cold call just kind of made him freeze. So really, letting a young person know that it's okay. You're going to be experimenting with concepts. You're going to be trying new concepts, that everyone feels this way. The second one is the willingness to act. So basically, we all have great ideas sometimes, but it's that action that turns our ideas into money. And so, as we go through this, we will talk about action steps and what it takes to get to be an entrepreneur. And then the last thing we talked about a little bit is you don't need a lot of money or business experience. And honestly, if a young person has no business experience, they're probably better off, because how you start a side hustle is very much different than how you would start a traditional business. And we'll go through that a little bit more. So when you get to that point of feasibility testing, you're going to walk through young people with this tool. And once again, it's in the Side Hustle book. So you're going to have them rate their ideas, their 3 to 5 ideas, based on these criteria. The first one is it feasible? So can you turn this idea into money? And a lot of times they may have an idea that is seasonal. It may not be in the right season. So for instance, let's say they've decided they're going to garden and sell their produce, but it's the middle of the winter and you're in an area that you can't garden in the winter. Is it persuasive? Meaning that could they see that sell? Could they persuade someone to buy? Is there a market in your community for that idea? Does it have profit potential? And we'll go into that in another segment. Basically, let's just say they're looking at wanting to make a piece of art, but it's going to be $100 in product before they even sell it, and they could only sell the piece for $100. It doesn't really have potential. It could, because there are ways to change that, but just walking through that process. Is it efficient? Is it something they can do today, or is it going to take a lot of legwork to get there? And then once again, are they motivated? Because we all know that if we are motivated by something, then we're going to continue to do it. But if you don't like doing it, then of course you're not going to do it. So when we list the 3 to 5 ideas here, you're going to come up with one that rises to the top, and maybe it has all high marks or high and medium. And so from here on out, I always have the youth just take one idea, because we're teaching them an entrepreneurship process. And regardless of, which idea they walk through, they're going to learn the process. And they may get halfway through and say, you know what, this is not going to work. And if there's anything we know about business, is we want to find that out before we actually put energy in the business. Now, does that mean that they couldn't shift something or change something and it could work? Absolutely. But it's always good to know. So once you get past that feasibility testing, like I said, everything is going to be from here on out focused on that one idea. Now, I've had people that, got a little bit further into the process and then they're like, I don't like this idea. And so we'll go back and I'll have them rework the steps with their new idea. But once again, it's a process. So whether a young person decides to start their business or they don't decide to start a business and they just use this information in their everyday life as an employee, I want to tell you a little bit about how that will benefit them. So my son, who's 17, works in an ice cream shop. He helped me actually create this curriculum, and he's gone out in Nevada and California and helped me train. And so he's heard it time and time again. At 17, he knows the profit margin of each of the sizes of ice cream that he serves. He knows which toppings cost more and which toppings cost less. And so he will suggest a topping that costs less than another one. And all of those things he learned because he walked through this process of business. And so I happened to be at a department store yesterday, and these two young ladies came out of the break room and they were just chit-chatting as they walked by me. And one of them said, we've done all we really need to do today. We've showed up, we've done it. I know we still have 3 hours, but I think we're pretty much done and I'm not giving any more. And of course, I was just like, oh my goodness, from a business owner's perspective, the manager just probably would have not loved to hear that. But, as we train young people to think as business people, whether they start their own business or they're working for you or someone else, it's very beneficial to them. So next, as we jump into this, after we've come up with the idea, we're going to ask, is this a high potential idea? So does it have characteristics that it looks like it will work and be a great idea? So walking through these questions, can you turn it into money? Is it low maintenance or easy to deliver? Will it bring in income, not just one time, but is it repeatable? Because that's important. You want to, after you get that first sale, there's usually energy or excitement, but can you repeat that process and repeat it quite frequently? Because if you happen to be designing jewelry, is that something that doesn't take hours and hours to do? Because what happens when you start making sales? Can you keep up with the sales? All right, so the next thing, let me just stop for a second and make sure we don't have any questions. If anyone has any questions, you can throw them in the chat now, because we're going to shift gears just a little bit. So that is the idea generation piece. And like I said, it's asking a lot of questions, walking through a process, and helping. So I've had young people that could not come up with anything. And quite frankly, I've asked question after question and I can't get there. So I've suggested something. I've said, I've heard you say that you love playing basketball. You're not perfect at basketball, but is that something you could teach someone else? And so there are rare occasions where you may have to suggest something to a young person, or there are occasions that you may have a group of people. So like I said earlier, the 5 young guys that were decided they wanted to do this whole fishing endeavor together, that's perfectly fine. So determining, what you need to do at that point, just be flexible with it, like always. All right, I don't see any questions at this point. I'll keep looking. So after they've decided, this is my idea, this is what I'm moving forward with, we're going to start talking about their ideal market, because just like every business out there, you have to know who your target market is. And so when we talk about target markets, there are always more than one target market, but really determining that first one that you'll get your most sales from is what we want to do with them. And of course, if you did additional classes down the line, you could always talk about those different target markets and actually marketing to, each of the targets. But, an activity that we do here is I break them up into partners, give them a little index card and do a competition, give them 2 minutes or 3 minutes, depending on how talkative your group is. And you can even give them more time if you want. And they're going to interview each other. And the whole idea is to learn as much as you can about the other person. So, if I give them 1 or 2 minutes per person, I'll make them stop and then shift gears. And then we count them. And then they will, let's say the one with the largest number gets to read them off to us and win a prize at that point. But really just using that activity. And it's fun because, you have people that maybe have grown up together, but they learn new things about each other. And that's the whole idea. But this activity helps them understand what it means and what it takes to learn about your ideal market. So you're talking about who would buy this service from you. Last summer, we did a session with the Yurok tribe, and we had a young man who created gill nets and set up the gill nets. And when we talked about who needed that service, he was talking about the elders in the community who no longer could get out into the river, and that they would really appreciate and purchase from him. Before we got off the call, there was a woman who ran a program for youth, and she wanted to actually start teaching that to the young people in the community. And so she said, before they even got off, we've got to get together because I've got to hire you. So, identifying who will buy that product. And then different target markets. There's nothing wrong with identifying the different ones, but once again, we'll just run with one target market because we can't do the work for all of them in the small amount of time that we have. So they're going to pick one customer, one target market, and from there, here's the activity that I just told you guys about. And in this one, I said 5 minutes. So go ahead and do whatever time you want to do. And so then from here, we're going to do this with their ideal customer. So we're going to take the time, and in the Side Hustle book, they're going to get to start looking at their ideal customer. So they're going to talk about their needs. What product or service would best fit that ideal customer's needs? What would it look like? What would it be like? Is this someone who needs to save up for whatever service or product they're selling, or do they have money that they can spend on it? Do they have time to buy during the day or during the evening? What is the level of experiency or expectancy that they want for the product that's being sold? And so it's almost like creating your customer avatar. So you want to know and have them identify everything they can about that target market, because of course that's going to tell them the next step, which is, what platform are they going to sell on? So I referred to earlier talking about sales platforms. So let's just say in that Instagram class I was, on yesterday, it was talking about it is definitely a younger market. Our business works really great on Facebook. My husband does high level mobile detailing on cars, boats, and all sorts of toys out there. And his target market is usually about 40 and above. So Facebook is working really well for us. But we have talked about doing some things on Instagram. But, if it's a babysitting or something like that, once again, we found Facebook works really well, and Instagram does work. But when we identify that customer, that ideal customer, that person, where they're going to be on social media or online, it's a great place to really start and know where you're going to sell. Now, here's one of those segments that we need to bring up safety and youth safety. So you may have young people as young as 12, and you don't want someone starting their own Facebook page for a business. So you may have them using their parents' page, or they're actually, going through only communicating with their parent on there. So in many of our youth organizations, we have two deep leadership. So we say that, we don't meet individually with an adult. And so this is a great time to talk about safety and making sure that they're running their businesses in a safe way. I would never send a young person to go mow someone's house, go mow their lawn that I have no idea who they are, right? Without having an adult there to make sure it's a safe situation. So always bringing this back to youth safety. So like I said, as we started this, inspiration is good. So ideas are great, but we're going to make the money when we combine the action with the idea. So it's really that idea that we can talk about something all day, but unless we take the next steps and move on to that next level, that side hustle will not happen. And so that's an important part of entrepreneurship. So we are basically got through this very quickly today because we didn't do all our exercises since I'm on my own. So I want to leave that up there for a second. If you need anything, if you need my email address or phone number, and then I'm going to stop sharing and look and make sure we don't have any questions or anything going on in the chat, because I can answer anything for you that maybe I didn't cover or you have questions about. So I just want to tell you guys, this last week I had a really incredible experience in youth development. I actually got to sit on a panel as a youth expert when it comes to working with Native youth and talking about the concerns and some of the challenges that our Native youth are facing. And when we look at the data right now, once again, financial stability is on the top 10 list of what our Native youth are needing and wanting skills and abilities to do. So, this is a great time if you've never implemented a youth entrepreneurship or financial literacy curriculum to do it, because our kids are asking for it. Quite frankly, they are. They're seeing that there's gaps between what they know and what they need for the future. And so it's a great time to really implement these things. I don't see any questions yet, so we must have done really well. So in the follow-up email, you guys will be getting the activities that we talked about. You're going to get a copy of the Side Hustle curriculum. It is not a copyrighted curriculum. If you have the ability to take it and teach it, we say go and do it. I have a training curriculum that I use with it. That's something we don't give away with the Side Hustle workbook, but we will come and train for you, and all of the activities will be included. And if there is nothing else, then we will see you guys next month, and we'll be talking about another great topic, how to price your side hustle. And once again, we have activities that they go through and identify exactly how to price whatever it is they're thinking about, and they can go to market with that price. How long will the training take? So Melody, is this the entire side hustle or just this one particular portion? Go ahead, you can tell me that. So essentially, if we do the whole side hustle in person, we usually try to take 2 days. And so that would be from, let's say, 9 to 3 or 9 to 4, depending on what your youth are used to doing. So whatever your day may be. We've done it longer, and put in other activities when they've had a full work day to 8 to 5. Online, the virtual training, we've been trying to do 1 to 2 hours and tried to do that in 3 to 4 days. And so depending on the amount of time you want to take, we can skinny it down and hit the surface, or we can do the full-blown training. So it's just really based on whatever time that you want to do it. And so really each module with an activity, like each section, like this section today, would be probably about 2 to 2.5 hours. But like I said, we put activities in there. And so I introduce them. I allow ample time for them to relax and play the activity, and then we process. So we debrief every activity and we bring it back to what we're discussing, because that's really where that learning takes place. All right, thank you guys. Thank you for joining. It's May. There's so much going on. Graduations, end of school. Today is my son's last day of school, so we're excited about that. Have a great afternoon, and we will see you guys next month.